Hello, screenwriters, and welcome to Writing for Screens. This week's episode, Oops, some thoughts on what happens when you just don't get it right. My name is Glenn Gers. I am the Chief Operating Everything at Writing for Screens, a channel devoted to trying to take the skills, tools, lessons, insights that I gained over a 25-year career writing for TV and movies, trying to leave some of that behind on my way out of the business. I have mainly focused, let's take a little screenshot of my channel. Excuse me. If you look down on the channel, you will see the first three playlists. Here's a close-up of that. The first three playlists, which has about 50 10-minute videos. Screenwriting essentials, screenwriting tools, skills, and craft, and the process, being a writer. This is the heart of this whole channel. This is where you'll find all the goods. Each one of these little 10-minute videos has a topic. The topic is the title. It's also the thumbnail in nice, bright, clear colors. You got genre, dialogue, character, flashbacks, all sorts of different stuff. Please check this out. It's there for you 24/7 for free. Anything that I have to tell you, I've worked to get into those, what I call lesson videos, the 10-minute short videos that are very scripted and edited. Then when that's done, I tend to come on once a week. Live streams every Wednesday at 1 p.m. talking about a different topic. That's Pacific Standard Time for those of you who care. This week's topic, as I said, is what happens when you just get it wrong. I'm going to do a couple of quick hellos. Hello, Pelicans and the bearded screenwriter. Hi, bearded screenwriter. And Meaning Bites. Hello, Nathan Dean. Good to see you. COE. Yes, that's me. Hello, Rishab. I am not sure what that means. Okay, Michael. Hi, Michael. Okay, so let's talk about Oops, because basically, I'll tell you what happened. Every once in a while, I will think about something. I think about topics to talk about here. I was thinking about a movie I wrote and directed, called Like, Share, Follow. No, I am from California, Los Angeles, California, in the USA. Anyway, so one of the things that I thought about is I talk a lot about the importance of making choices, of following your instincts. I've done a bunch of videos on that topic, particularly, and I really do think it's a good video. It's called Instinct. I'll put a link to it down at the bottom in the description. When I am done with this video, I'll go back into the description and put in a link to that. So I talk a lot about this idea that being an artist means making choices. That's really all there is to it. When it comes down to it, there is no right or wrong. Every artist has to figure out things their own way. You have to follow your own path. And the most important thing is having a big toolbox to work from, and then knowing yourself, knowing your kind of art, knowing your strengths and weaknesses, trying to explore them and expand them. So what happens, though, something I do not talk about, is if you follow this path, if you follow instincts and make choices and define yourself and discover things, you're still not going to get it all right. That's part of being creative. The truth is that under the best of circumstances, you can absolutely not know that what you are doing is not working. And hello, Doreen. What I'm going to talk about specifically is my movie Like, Share, Follow. I will put a link to that too. That is a movie that I did with the Blumhouse company about 10 years ago now. And it got bought by HBO, put on their channel Cinemax very briefly with no promotion whatsoever. And then has been sort of lost since then. Cinemax doesn't have its own streaming service. HBO is in Max now. So my movie is unavailable, can't be rented, can't. So therefore, I feel very okay about saying, hey, it's on YouTube. Somebody pirated it, put it there, watch it. Anyway, so one of the things that I did, now this is a script I wrote by myself. I worked with Blumhouse over the course of a year or so on it. And but I really had final say. I had final cut. When it really came down to it, this was the best reflection. I had the most. They empowered me in many wonderful ways. And when it was all done, and then like a year later, I watched it and I realized that there were too many opening sequences, among the other problems with it. And by the way, I think it's a good little movie, but the original way that this opened was there's an opening title montage of this. The main character is a YouTuber. He does, gaming and stuff on YouTube and comedy sketches. And so there's just a montage of him doing his stuff. So we get to this like intro, this character and this world of YouTubing for those who didn't know what it was, especially 10 years ago. Then I cut to a production sequence of him making a video, which allowed us to see how he does it, like understand this is going to be a behind the scenes of this, and to meet his two partners in crime, his production partners and team, and watching him make a video. The video that they are making that I show is an announcement that he's hit 2 million subscribers, and he's talking to his fan base because this is going to be a sort of stalker story. So I wanted to establish his popularity and his personal connection to his fan base, because that's really the key to the whole story. So we have an opening montage to show what he does, then a production scene where we see him making another video. After that, I wrote a party scene in which he's celebrating his 2 million subscribers with a bunch of people there. But while hosting it, not really. He's more concerned with his new videos and his online life. And a woman at the party flirts with him. And he does end up sleeping with her, because I wanted to show that he wasn't desperate, that the relationship that is going to happen in the story was not because he would have fallen for anybody. It was a very specific connection that happens. So then there's a scene in which he has a call with an agent who wants to sign him to a big agency and become a big, a more mainstream commercial player, which he turns down once again because of his devotion to this thing he does, this direct connection to his audience. Now we've got like 4 or 5 scenes there. And each one of them was making a vital point about his character. And then the next scene is the one that's in the story where he goes to pick up his mail at his mailbox place and meets this woman who works at the mailbox place. So the thing is, when I wrote these sequences, I thought the audience needs to know this, and this is a very each scene was entertaining. Each scene was not a bad scene, but it was just too many introductions. There was too much. Even though it was as well crafted as I could do, and I'm pretty good at this crafting stuff, so they were clever scenes and they were pretty punchy and they built. But when it came down to it, when I did the first edit, I was like, this is just taking forever. We're introducing him, then reintroducing him and reintroducing. But at the time, I didn't really see that. I eventually cut all 3 out of the 5 scenes. There's now just 2. There's the opening montage and then the production scene where we're seeing that he's got the 2 million people. And what's fascinating to me about this is even now, as I see it, I recognize that the production scene and the opening montage, it feels like 2 openings, 2 starts, and it's a real stumble. This is the first 4 or 5 minutes, and like I said, it's well made so that it's interesting, but there's a feeling the story is not hooking you in yet. And that's partly because I simply didn't see that the opening montage and the production scene felt like two separate entities, but doing the same thing. I felt they were sort of building on each other, and I couldn't cut them. These were things I could not cut because there was the way they were filmed. Neither one could, without them, there would be a hole in the narrative. So I had this thing. What I did was I just cut the montage down so it's pretty fast and it kind of flows into the next scene. It almost works. It works well enough. The point about, I'm saying this all in detail because if you do go watch I'll put a link in the description. If you do watch the movie, you'll see that while it's done stylishly and I think, and entertaining enough, the story isn't clicking in the way it needs to. It's kind of getting started, but it feels like it stumbles. I could not see that when I wrote the script and shot these scenes. I saw it in post, but by that time there was nothing I could do about it. I couldn't reshoot those sequences, so I had to edit them to cover the problem as best I could. The important thing I think to explain here is this was not because I was rushed. I had plenty of time to write this. I overthink it. I was very careful. Furthermore, there were plenty of people involved. I was working with a team of very, very good producers. Plus, there were the executives at Blumhouse. Plus, there were plenty of people who read this script and said, yeah, that should work. No one was particularly worried about this. We felt a little bit like, it seems very introduction-y, but at the same time, it was very entertaining. It felt like it was building. There was no pressure to do this. It wasn't like, there was some studio executive saying, oh, we need another scene where we establish this. This was me. This was me thinking, I'm in the audience's place. What do I need the audience to do? So what this really comes down to is I have no one to blame this on. I cannot. This was as healthy a production process as one can get, considering how many factors are involved in production. I was given the opportunity to screw it up as fully as possible. And I did. And it's okay. It's not the end of I'm not saying this is the end of the world. What I'm saying in it is it's very important to recognize that part of creativity is going to be that you just don't see it until it's too late. Especially with filmmaking, because filmmaking is a process that exists in time. Once you've shot it, you don't usually get to reshoot it. So if there's something that's not working in editing, and we did reshoot the ending, but we couldn't reshoot the ending and the beginning. There's just too much to do. And honestly, the beginning didn't feel that off at first. Anyway, the point about this is sometimes you make a mistake because you're breaking the rules. You're taking a risk. That was not the problem here. And the other thing is you can't just use the rules to play it safe. Like a lot of people, when they're teaching this filmmaking and screenwriting stuff, they will say to you, like, if you follow these rules, you will avoid making mistakes. You will be these rules, this formula, this series of wisdom about how you make a film will assure you that you will not make mistakes. That's actually not true. What following all the rules will assure you is that you will do something fairly unoriginal. You'll have something okay, but it won't be art. It won't be exciting. It will be okay. It will be by the book. It will serve its purpose, but it won't have that excitement that only something with some originality, with some personal choice, with some sense of doing things not because it's the rules, not because it's been done before, but because the story and the creative people involved require it. That's the only way to make something good. Formula, playing by the book, sticking to the rules, feels safe because you're not playing the game. You're not getting out there and taking the existential risk of saying, I'm going to do it this way. And so therefore the audience feels that missing sense of excitement. So the point about this is simply that at a certain point, you just have to hope that it's not a colossal mistake, that you have not done something that's going to destroy. Like the mistakes I'm talking about in Like, Share, Follow they're livable. Most people get through the opening. They feel a little like, I'm not sure what this is, but it's only 3 or 4 minutes. It's not that long a sequence. And then we get right into the story, which is cool, but it's a mistake. It's just not that good. And it's not, I can't blame it on anyone else. The important thing about this is to recognize that you can't avoid it. You can try, but you can't really avoid this happening. That you can only hope that whatever it is, you're not going to have only this one chance. Because I think the only thing that does help with this is experience. In other words, I would now, if I made another film, not make that mistake. I'd make a lot of other mistakes, but you won't make that mistake again. The problem is, so fine, I don't make that mistake, but then I'd make some other mistake. The only way that you really get the value of experience to keep you safe is if you do a lot of work. And honestly, it's just very rare that anybody gets to do a lot of work in this business, because there's so much risk and so much competition involved, so much financial risk. So I actually urge if there's a lesson to be gotten from this, I urge everyone to get as much experience as possible. Do this as much as possible at the lowest stakes possible. At whatever it is that it's not going to destroy your life or your career if you mess up, because that's how you gain the skills and the knowledge to not make some of the mistakes. You'll always make mistakes. But if you can get experience, do plays, do home videos, do web series, do whatever you can do to get some kind of to learn by making mistakes. It is the only way, but that has to go all the way through the process. You actually have to. I did not see my mistakes until I had seen it with an audience. You can't really know how something is going to go until it goes, until it's out there, until complete strangers in weird circumstances see it and respond. And even less than their response, your own perception of it changes when you watch them watching it. That's just a fact. There is something about watching an audience watch your thing that gives you a new set of eyes. So I am just urging everyone out there to try not to, go all in. Try not to do things where if this doesn't work, your career is over and you're in hopeless debt and your life is ruined. Try to do things that you can do 20 projects, 20 mistakes, 20 experiments. Hopefully you'll also be gaining collaborators and you'll be gaining audience by doing little projects. But I just want to urge you, that's the big lesson here. I'm going to catch up on comments now. Just wanted to talk a little bit about this idea that the thing I'm talking about, the fact that you need to make choices and follow your instincts, means you will get things wrong sometimes. Okay. Rashab says, talk about the character development. I am good at dialogue. I collect scene ideas, but I don't know how to convert it into conversational form of two people talking. I will talk about that. Give me a minute. I'm going to run through some of the other comments, and then I will get to that topic. Hi, Donna, and Thumper, and Adam Lum. Hello, Lysanda. Okay. Tevikins, good to see you. How you doing? It's been a while. Okay. Adam Lum, I rewatched your video on getting stuck this week. Wrote myself a big list of what I didn't like and was hung up on. Realized I hated some aspects and tossed them out. Thank you. That's great. That it is. I am so glad to find that these. I just sort of toss things out as best I can because they're not connected. They're just tools to try. Okay, so Adam says, I knew my main problem was not knowing what the screenplay was about. I know from experience it falls into place once I know. You are so right. Writing is making choices. Yes, thank you. Hi, Adrian. Kelly J asks, how much did Like, Share, Follow cost? Good, fair question. The original budget was about $700,000. It was done through Blumhouse. They were doing their under $1 million. And so it was way under $1 million. It was 700,000. We shot for, I think, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. It was like 15 or 18 days. Then we edited for a while. I got a cut. We watched it, and we realized that there was stuff in the ending that needed to be reshot. And they said, here, have another 200,000 to reshoot for 1 week. And I reshot a whole bunch of things. A lot of stuff in the last quarter of the story is reshoots mixed in with the original shot. So the total budget eventually was about $900,000. That's from Blumhouse. Okay. Many artists are too critical of their work. Some filmmakers don't see their films after release. Yes, I completely, but I guarantee you, during the release, during the preparation for the release, they did test screenings. The companies would insist on that. So that means the filmmakers have seen it too many times. At a certain point, you just get so tired of watching it. And even watching it with an audience, there comes a point at which you've learned all you could about what you did right and what you did wrong. There's nothing you can do to fix some of it. And so after you've seen it with a bunch of audiences, you want to sort of stop. Hello, Gene. Okay. On watching your work on screen, do you actually have to see the audience, or is it also useful to have a reading group reacting to your text first? Okay. The answer is those are both valuable, but they're separate. No matter what somebody sees when they read it, there's a secondary experience of seeing it produced. There's a huge different experience between judging the script and what happens to a script in the production. So being able to experience working with actors who interpret things differently, directors, designers, working with budgets and locations, experiencing what happens to a perfect script. If you were to get a perfect script, of which there are perfect is a weird word, but really good scripts, once you get into production, all sorts of things can go right and wrong. Until you've experienced that a bunch of times, you can't write a script that's built for production. You need to know what that's like. And then post-production and showing it to an audience, those are all experiences that you really need to have if you're going to write for the screen. You could, there are people who, if they're lucky, they essentially write them like plays and they don't get involved with production. That doesn't happen that much. Usually it's required that you do rewrites to help the production. So the answer is, do you have to watch your work on a screen? If you are a screenwriter, yes. Sooner or later, you need that experience. Reading groups are great. Having people react to your text is great. But the experience of having something made, of going through the process of turning words into scenes that are captured in cinema and then shown to an audience is a unique part of the process that you must experience in order to write the script well. Okay, So I'm going to go back to Rishabh's question about, hold on. So Rishabh said, talk about character development. Hold on, I'm making a note here. Rishabh, I urge you to take a look at my channel. You will find here, go through the videos, and you will find there's a whole one on character development. There's a whole one on dialogue. So the question of like, how do you write dialogue? How do you convert it into conversational form? Those are all things I discuss. But more important, let me give you some specific things to look at. One is building character arcs. I urge you to watch this video. And more than anything else, this one. And hold on. This one talks, because the question you're talking about, if you're good at dialogue and you have scene ideas, the question is, what is happening in the scene that's provoking these people to speak to each other or do things with each other in that moment? That is the definition, what I call dramatic action. Has nothing to do with whether or not there's physical action. It has to do with the action of people in each other, which is what is a scene. Most important, please watch this video. Think in scenes. This is where I talk about the whole idea of creating a dramatic action within the context of an engagement between characters. Exactly what you're asking about. Character development happens between scenes. Character development happens in the course of putting scenes together in an order. Any particular scene cannot show character development. It can at very best show a change in a moment. But a character's development occurs throughout the length of the story. So please do check out the video on character, the video on dialogue. Please. The question that you asked is in detail answered in my main videos. Okay. Let's keep going with the questions. Okay, so Donna says, now that I've got my feature film script ready, the challenge is in getting it in front of the right people here in Australia. I got some feedback from a producer friend on my synopsis, but okay, I want to make a distinction here between getting something done and getting something done in the business, because we have very little control over whether or not the industry, the official entertainment industry, wherever you are, will allow you access, will decide to invest in your project. Those things are dependent on so many layers of external things to you, things you cannot control, no matter how much you strategize and say, oh, if I write this story, they'll buy it. I guarantee you, if there was such a calculation that could be done, people would do it and there would be sure things. There are no sure things. So what I'm talking about is doing things that don't require the investment and participation and support of the mainstream industry. I'm talking about getting experience however you can. If you cannot get the industry to love your script, which is usual, it's unusual to get the industry to love something, even if it's great. So what you want to do is look for opportunities where you can find film students, wannabe directors, DIY indie people, theater companies, whatever it is that you can do to get experience without having to get approval of the highly competitive and financially stressful industry. I'm saying experience needs to start before you are professional. You need to get experience, a lot of it. You need to, like the Beatles, okay? The Beatles famously played in the Cavern Club, this dive bar, for years, a couple of years, I believe, including stints in Hamburg where they played 5 shows a night in some horrible, sleazy bars, in order to become professional, in order to become the Beatles. And they were already the Beatles. They were already great, but they weren't ready yet because they hadn't had experience. And I just urge you to think in terms of your ability to get experience before you're ready, before you're professional, before money is waiting on it, before all of those things. You need to get a lot of experience. Okay, so screenwriting is such a weird art form, Adam Lum says. So far from the final product audiences watch. That is true. What did you learn about writing once you'd seen your work produced, and what lessons from directing? You may have partly just answered this. Okay, here's the deal. I devoted myself to screenwriting and DIY filmmaking since I was like 15, 16 years old. And what I learned was that all of the true artistic insights I had before production had to be then processed through production. For instance, one thing I did was I couldn't get experience making films. There was simply no access for a teenager to make films in the 1970s. I could make silent, and I did make silent home movie films, which I made, but there's a real narrow amount you can do with a silent movie. So I did theater. I did theater for 10 years. I did a lot of plays in high school and college. And that gave me experience because I got plays put on the stage and I learned what happens when actors say these things which you imagine a certain way. And a lot of the times, the way you imagine and the way it plays, pretty identical. It's pretty cool when you think a line's going to play and it plays. But also to learn the pacing of things, the amount of excess you're writing, the ways that things work or don't work. Everybody's lessons will be different. But my point is I got experience on the stage because I couldn't get it on film at the time. Then when I got the opportunity, when video started to develop to home video that you could shoot and make little home video movies, I did that for years. And the experience was incredible. I learned so much about what I could and couldn't do because I tried some things. I tried things that were like, that's against the rules. Don't do that. And I was like, it's a home video. I can do what I want. So I would do all these things that were against the rules. Some of them I learned that they did work, but I also learned long speeches. It's risky. You have to figure out how to make them work. I love long speeches, but they're very hard to pull off. So the answer is, I was a terrific on-paper writer until I had experience. It took me 15, 20 years of getting production experience in theater, in DIY, and then as a professional before I really got to where I felt my skills were as good as my ambitions. So the answer is, you will never stop learning and growing. And as long as you keep getting experience of any kind of experience is important. The number of specific things I learned how much faster you can go than you think. I learned that there's so much you don't need to say. Even if you say it really well, I could write great exposition dialogue, but I found I often didn't need it. I learned that scenes have an interior tension. I learned, most important, that you do not write thinking about what you as the author needs to tell the audience. What you write is what the characters need to do in their moment. And this is really the entirety of what is in my, and once again, I beg you guys to watch these short videos. There's 50 of them, each one about 10 minutes. And all I can say is all the things that you'll say, like, what did you learn in your 20 years getting experience? Actually, 40 years of getting experience, stage experience, TV experience. What did I learn? It's in there. It's in these videos. Okay, so Michael was told, I was told to stay away from the director. And that is very often true. The director's got a very hard job, and sometimes the director and the writer can work together. I was very lucky on the set of Fracture. The director and I began to really, really get along and work together. Daily basis. It was fantastic. And it was really rough because there were a lot of influences and changes being made. But a lot of times the director is like, I need to focus on what I am doing. And therefore, the last thing I want is the writer having his concerns. And so often, writers don't understand production. Writers don't understand actors. Writers don't understand a lot of stuff. So they'll be like, oh, he should say it that way. And it's like, you don't understand how actors work. You can't tell them how to say it. Okay. So Adrian says, in a past stream, you mentioned that you're now unhireable, if I recall correctly. Could you explain what you mean about that? Well, there's a couple of things. I don't know if I'm totally, I probably could scrounge around and dig up some jobs if I wanted to hustle full time on them. But there's a couple of things. One, I'm 66 years old. A person of retirement age is very rarely wanted in writing jobs. The main writing work right now is in television. 80% of the work, the jobs, are on staffs, not creating shows, working as a staff writer on a series. Here's the thing about that. It's like a family unit. And so they choose people that they can live with. They have to live with these people for 6 weeks to 6 months to a year, intimately every day till 3 a.m. So they pick people they've already worked with. There's only a limited spot for people who they don't know. The competition has gotten so huge, and people are afraid to hire someone my age because most of the time people like me are set in our ways. We have our own way of thinking and our own way of doing things. Very often it's old-fashioned. I'm not going to lie and say, most people my age, and to a certain extent me, I would not be able to write a great story about Gen Z characters. At least I know that, and I can make a story written by Gen Z characters better. I could collaborate well with someone from Gen Z to help them with the things I do know. But I don't know what it's like to live in that world now. So I'm not great for that. The other thing is I'm more expensive. A writer who has got a 20-year career usually is required to be paid more than somebody who's a first-year writer. So therefore, it's just better for the company to hire newcomers who are more flexible and obedient and who cost less. Anyway, so those are the main things. And also, there's a certain sense in the industry that you are looking for magic. You are always looking for that person who's going to bring some kind of new, exciting thing that's going to save everybody's ass, because that's the big thing. We're all afraid that this project is not going to have the magic, because you never know when it will. So you're always looking for, can I get this person in to bring their magic? Somebody who's been around as long as I am, they figure they're not magic. If I was magic, I would be bigger. If I was magic, I would be more famous. So if I'm not famous at 60, I don't have magic. The fact that I may have skills and talent and little magic It doesn't do it for the people who are desperately frightened that they're not going to be magical enough. Okay. So, okay, let me get through some of these questions. Hi, Yuji. I used to be scared by potential oops, but I accepted that I must collect enough oops to cross the finish line of the whole story. Not only cross the finish line of the story, but you have to collect enough oops in your career that you have to do 20 stories, of which 2 or 3 of them may be total oops. It's just how you learn. It's just how you work. Robert Freeman says, how do you advise us to deal with frustration at writer's block? I threw my computer and it cost me $1,000 US dollars. How to control rage. Okay, 2 questions. One, how to control rage, separate and psychological self-help question, which I urge you to go on the internet. There's going to be tons of stuff about dealing with anger and rage and ways to siphon it or balance it. But in terms of the frustration of writer's block, first of all, I urge you to watch this video, Fear of Writing, because I do believe, once again, I will put the links to all these videos I'm mentioning in the description underneath this video about 10 minutes after the live stream is done. So, Fear of Writing, in which it's a long one because I describe in detail my writer's block, which lasted years of writer's block. But also, I urge you to look at Getting Stuck or Lost, which I talk about. Getting stuck is writer's block. Getting lost is another way of putting it. These are lots of thoughts about this. So what I would say is please do watch those videos. The main thing that I can say is actually in this whole section, the third of these 3 playlists is called The Process / Being a Writer. Process is how you get past writer's block. You don't get it through content. You don't get it through formula. You can only get through writer's block with process. So I urge you to watch. I've got several videos on the topic of creating a ritual, of small steps, of asking questions. But the one thing I would say is the way that you get past artistic problems is by working on your mechanics of how you write, and not worrying too much about what you write. Okay. Germany Football Rocks. Asks, is it true that figuring out the dramatic question of the script before writing the actual script could save you 10 rewrites? The answer is nothing can save you 10 rewrites. You would think so. Certainly it cannot hurt to, quote, figure out the dramatic question of the script. I define the dramatic question of the script as 6 questions. I did a video on this. But what I would say is, even if you've got that, like I said, Like, Share, Follow was a script I wrote at the end of my screenwriting career when I was essentially saying to myself, I have nothing left to learn as a screenwriter. I mean, I am as good as I am going to get, and I'm good. When it comes to screenwriting, I am good. There was very little challenge about screenwriting. The challenge was producing my scripts, to make, to direct, to learn about that. So Like, Share, Follow was fit I answered every question. I knew everything. It was all theoretically right. Didn't matter. I still learned. I had to reshoot a good portion of the story. The answer is prepare to have to rethink things. However, yes, anything that you know, that you make a choice and say, this is what this is about, this is how I'm going to do this, that obviously is going to help. Roberta says, Roberta88, What is the difference between writing plays and screenplays? That's a huge question. I start from playwriting. Now I'm trying to write a screenplay. I keep getting feedbacks that I'm not writing visually. Yes, that's a problem. Okay, here's the thing. The language of theater is the language of actors in a performance space. You can jump around in time. There's a lot of techniques you can do on a stage that break up the famous unities of it doesn't have to be one scene in one location. However, the story is told through the behavior of characters towards each other and through the language they use. That's the tools you have as a playwright. The thing that you have to add in when you're screenwriting is there's a whole extra language, the language of cinema, the language of cuts, of shots, of physical action, of production design. There's a whole lot of layers of things so that you no longer need to use the language to carry that stuff. Because the way that a story is told is not only through what people say to each other. It's also how the story advances by cutting from one place to another, one story element or one action to another. The answer to any of these differences, and this is a big one, this is a hard thing to learn, is that you have to start to learn the additional language of cinema, which you have to learn by watching a lot of movies and studying the craft of screenwriting. All I can say is everyone will have their own balance of where playwriting and screenwriting blend. I mean, there are some, 12 Angry Men is a play, okay? 12 Angry Men is an amazing play that was shot very beautifully, but it's essentially a play. So I'm not saying that you can't take playwriting skills and put them into a screenplay. I'm saying that the world of screenwriting as a profession steers towards the screenwriter as the servant of the director, of the director's storytelling. So therefore, even if you are coming up with the story, you're going to need to understand the way that cinema tells a story. It's too big a topic for me to answer right now. All I can say is that this is the sort of thing, there are literally dozens, if not hundreds of books written on the subject and videos and classes about the subject. The only thing that you can do is absorb a bunch of them and see how it plays out for your particular style. Everyone's will be different. Okay. No more questions because we are going to run out of time. I saw a writer-director do 4 takes, get frustrated, and closed the set. Read well, but performed awful. Yes, okay. Michael's talking about actually a layered set of situations. One is sometimes there's a lot of people on a film set, even a small film. I mean, like I did one where the crew was about 7 or 8 people. That still means you've got 10 people in a small space. Each one has their own needs. The camera person, the sound people who are always getting in each other's way, the lighting people, the costume people, they all have their own needs and they are trying to push the moment in their direction. One of the main things a director has to do is make sure that while people are contributing, they are not pushing things out of the track that the story and the director needs. So therefore, their job partly is to limit the creativity of the other people while at the same time needing it and respecting it. It's a very hard balance, and sometimes they need to say, I need to clear this and let the actors have their time without pressure. But that's also sometimes a problem of the last part of this is it read well but performed awful, which is a separate problem, which is sometimes something, and this is the only way that you get better at this is through experience. If you write a script, you need to have actors put it on. You need to have directors work through it and tell you what does and doesn't work. Hold on, I actually did a video on this. I don't know where it is. It's something about getting your script on the screen. I'll try and find it. Anyway, the answer is experience, production, crucial to learning the art of screenwriting. Hello, Wolf Powers. Stay Foolish says, how can we avoid accidentally doing information dumping in the screenplay? I would say that you can avoid it by doing drafts. The easiest way to do it is to not worry too much about it all the time. Sometimes you should information dump it into the script. You can always come back later and trim it or split it up. The main thing that we want to do here is, did I lose this? Oh, I used to have a spiral. Let's see. Yeah, there it is. This is how you solve that problem. Imagine that your draft is this line going around, and you keep going around and rewriting it over and over. That's the best way to avoid information dumps. You shouldn't overthink it. Sometimes you need to just get the information out. So maybe you'll do like a big half-page speech, and then you'll say, like, later on, I'm going to make this less of a dump. But at the moment, take the dump, so to speak. Because the easiest way to avoid it is later on to look at the proportions, look at the pace, look at the drama. Sometimes you need to not worry about that. Okay. Write what the characters need to do in their moment. And you learned what to leave out. Thank you. Yes, that is absolutely it. Does the director work with the script editor more than the actual writers? Well, that would depend. There's no such thing as a script editor in most American productions. The script editor would be considered the executives or producers, but there is no script editor in production that I know of. There's generally a working with the director and the producers and the executives to do several drafts to tinker with things that they feel need work, at which point the director, it entirely depends on the director, and it entirely depends on how the director and the writer get along, and whether or not the writer is a flexible person who can attend to the director. There's no real rule on that. Okay. I'm reading Paul Auster's Burning Boy, a biography of Stephen Crane. It's like a master class in writing. Paul Auster. Thank you. You reminded me of something I really wanted to talk about here. Oopsie. Let's see. It is this quote from Paul Auster. I'm just going to read it. It was in an interview he gave. It was a video interview. And he said, "The essence of being an artist is to confront the thing you're trying to do, to tackle it head on. And if, in wrestling with these things, you manage to make something that's good, well, it will have its own beauty. But it's not a kind of beauty you can predict. It's nothing you can strive for. What you have to strive for is to engage with your material as deeply as you can. Even if you're trying to be funny, you have to engage with it as deeply as you can." This is a really important quote. It's sort of saying the same thing I was, which is you can't over-control and perfect the writing. You can't control what the piece will be like. You can have a plan and you can work towards that plan and you can prioritize things in that plan. But there will be compromises and changes that you have to make all along. But if your engagement, if your effort is towards how do I get to the heart of this? How do I get to the feeling? How do I follow the characters? How do I explore this idea and this moment? If you engage with that in a moment-to-moment, word-by-word, sentence-by-sentence way, if you plan your outline by thinking those thoughts, if you keep thinking, how can I get this to be the best it can be, it will come out as it will come out. And as he said, it may be a good thing, it may not. And it may have its own beauty, but you cannot figure out entirely what that will be. You can only do it and see. Okay. Fung says, but Clint Eastwood is his 90s. And the answer is yes. Sure. By the way, just in general, if you hear something and your first thought is, I have an objection because of this one individual thing, let me assure you, there are always examples of things that are seemingly different than a general truth. But A, Clint Eastwood is not a screenwriter, okay? I was talking about screenwriters. B, Clint Eastwood got super duper famous and successful early in his life and had a long career in which he did that. So at this point, I guarantee you, if Clint Eastwood showed up at 70 and no one had heard of him and he tried to do what he did at 70, no one would have let him do it. He was cruising. He was empowered by his fame and his box office success and his relationships within the studio, in which he traded off, I will do this action movie and this for this other more artsy thing I want to do. Apples and oranges. Okay. Right. So Robert says, is that the reason why so many writing coaches are in their 50s? Because nobody hires them in the industry anymore. Yes, absolutely right. Yes, that is why. And that is why you have to be careful with your writing coaches, that they are not just an embittered writer. There will be valuable experience they will be able to pass on to you, but A, they may be legitimately out of touch. I try to be really open about how I am in many ways legitimately out of touch. I only try to talk about the things that I am in touch with, which are the craft and the art. I really try to not talk about the business because I am increasingly out of touch with it. I've been wanting to ask you forever, what is it on the sofa behind you that looks like a stuffed tuna? It is, in fact, a stuffed fish. It's a pillow. It is a pillow that looks like a giant fish. I bought it at a sporting goods store in Louisiana during the shoot of Mad Money. I was only on the set for 2 weeks on Mad Money, which I wish I had been more. I couldn't manage to do that. But I was in Shreveport, Louisiana. I didn't know anything about Shreveport, Louisiana. So one evening, when I first got there, I went around and somebody said you should see the Bass Pro Shop. It's a big chain of gigantic warehouses of sporting goods and all sorts of stuff. They had some really cool shirts, which I bought, which I've now worn out. And they had this cool fish pillow. So I bought it. I keep it on the sofa. Okay. So it is both a cool fish pillow and a souvenir of a production experience. How can you survive as a writer having years of writer's block? I suffered. I'm also immensely stubborn, which you need to be. In order to be a professional, you need to be extraordinarily stubborn. You have to just keep trying. That's just part of it. Luckily, that is the immense anxiety and inexperience that caused the writer's block, and the stubbornness, they balanced until 1-1. How do you script sleuth? How do you feel about aspiring writers learning to impose deadlines on themselves? I feel that you need to do it. I think you need to impose a reasonable deadline. You should not be like trying to do insane deadlines. Like for me, I'm writing a novel right now. I work on it a couple of hours a day. Now, if I worked 8 hours a day, I would be faster. It would get done faster. I don't know that it would be better because I can feel my brain flattening out at a certain point and I take a break then. But the answer is, there is no sense to saying, I have to get this done in an insane amount of time, like super fast. It's better to do something that allows you their process, but does not just drag on forever. So the answer is like, I have imposed myself a, you'd better write every day deadline, not a how much numbers I have to write, words, pages, whatever, and not how much time. I let that be flexible, but I insist to myself, that I make some progress every day. And what happens when I do that is that I tend to want to do it more the next day because I've been making progress and it's beginning to feel like I'm looking forward to it. But I'm also in my mind setting myself a deadline that I would really like to have a readable draft by New Year's, if I can. Don't know if I will, because I've never done this before. When you've done it before, you should have a better sense of what kind of deadlines you can impose. But the answer is, it is important to impose some form of ritual speed upon yourself. It is not natural, but it is. Eventually, you learn to love it. You learn to love the imposition on yourself. In Film Courage, couple tutors claim figuring the dramatic questions first would be better than vomit drafts that waste time. Yeah, that's actually true. Look, I believe in outlining. I believe in asking questions and making a plan. I believe that you still have to do a vomit draft when you have an outline. The question is, would you be better off not having an outline? The answer is, usually no. But there are writers who do better to not overthink it and just write something and then they do it. Every writer is different. What I can say is, if you are not feeling good, or if you are feeling lost, or if your work is getting confused, try outlining. I have 2 videos, how to outline and why outline, talking about my belief in that process. The answer is always going to be, is it working for you? If blurting out whatever comes into your head and then figuring out later works for you, if that's a good flow, do it. Just don't burn your manuscript. Yes, if you have writer's block, do not throw out what you've got. Whatever you've got, keep it. Even if you don't look at it again. Do not, Jean is really right, do not throw out your work, especially now digitally, but even if you had pieces of paper, how much could it be? It's worth keeping, at least until the project is done. Roberta, I tried to apply all playwriting techniques into screenwriting directly. Yeah, no, that's not going to work. It will work if you have somebody who wants to make a play, a filmed play. There is such a thing. There are films that are essentially a play. But if you want to be a screenwriter who can work in the existing industry, you do need to learn screenwriting, Roberta, as well as take the values of character and dramatic action that you've learned as a playwright. But there's a whole separate art of cinematic writing. Hi, Maria. Hi. Sorry, that's okay. Soccer is live. I can be here anytime. I am really glad that you made it, Maria. Late is better than never. You've got a lot going on. I know that. Okay. Okay, Adam Lum is commenting on the question about, should you know what it's about before you start? Yes, for me, I have to know what it's about, as I hate writing wasted material. Even my vomit drafts need to know what it's about. There are people who prefer to discover it as they go along. They are not wrong. What's wrong is if you're feeling bad about doing that, in which case, yes, make a plan, make a what it's about, answer the questions, write an outline. But if you are doing well without an outline, don't worry about it. Okay. I do a lot of what if outlining instead of writing the scripts and put it all together after correcting the outline 10,000 times. That's me too. For me, if I spend less time on the outline, I spend more time on drafts. Yes, but honestly, you're always going to need to do work on each step. Don't think that if you get the outline perfect, of which there is no such thing, that you will be able to then, just write 2 drafts and be done. You're still going to discover things as you go. No more questions, please. Mark, sorry for being late. And it's interesting from a publisher regarding a children's story. They weren't happy when I sent it in screenplay format. No novel format. Well, yeah, they're a publisher. They're looking for novels. See if you can adapt it. Hunter Hewitt, how many times should I rewrite my script? There is no right answer to that. It will depend on how close your first draft is to what you imagined it would be, and how many things in it that you find are not quite satisfying. The way there's a famous Walter Mosley quote that I've added, which is here it is. It's done when you know that everything you need to fix, you can't fix yet. I love that quote. So Hunter, the point is, you read your draft. If you don't find anything in it that you can think would be better, you're done. If you read it and you're like, that scene seems a little short, or that scene seems a little long, or that character seems a little inconsistent in these two scenes, then you rewrite those parts until you get, so that when you read through it, you can't see anything in particular that you can fix. Do you advise writers to enlist, to join the blacklist? The blacklist is generally an honorable institution. I was on the very first blacklist. One of my scripts was on the very first blacklist. So they contacted me about that at some point. At that time, the blacklist was actually just a list that was getting passed around. Now it's a whole website with a community. And my feeling is, if you can afford it, sure. Seems good. I would recognize the lack of value that crowdsourcing and committee work and peer review does for any creative artist. There's only so much that you can get from other people before you're just blurring into other people. You need to be you. And sometimes other people won't like that. And the competitive idea of ranking and rating is not always valuable. I don't think it's ever valuable, but I understand why you need to do it. So the answer is yes. If you recognize the limitations of the blacklist, it's a community that is honest and not trying to rip people off. Hi, Hasko. Yeah, apparently a lot of people in Europe are just only arriving now because of soccer. Welcome. I dig it. I don't personally watch that much sports, but I certainly understand it. Maria says, you edit your script based on feedback. You can also get into an endless loop of forever edits. And there are story editors on TV show. Actually, no. The story editor is actually a writer's title. There are certain titles that the staff writers get. Story editor, consulting producer, co-executive producer, et cetera, et cetera. Story editor is one of the lower levels of staff writing jobs. There isn't an actual separate person, usually, whose job is to edit the writers without being one of the writers. There was, back in the studio system, back in the 30s and 40s, there were story editors in the script department of the studio. That's because they had such a thing, and they don't have that anymore. Okay. Maria's story editor doesn't... I think that in this case, the thing that you're describing, unless there's some companies that call this, that's called a creative executive, in my experience, is that a person who works for the company, whose job it is to work with the writers on the script, are usually called a development person or a creative executive. I guess they could be called a story editor, but that would be confusing because there is an actual job title in TV called story editor, which is a staff writing job. Likewise, a lot of producers on TV are actually writers, but you can't give them a writer credit. There's no, like, the writer credit is for the person who wrote that script. So if you're a staff writer, there is a staff writer credit, but then in order to give advances, in order to give a hierarchy, they've named a lot of writing jobs producer. Okay. I'm going to have to skip some of these. We're going too long. Hunter is talking about, I had mentioned a couple weeks ago about the David Mamet script of adaptation of the book Hannibal, which was just awful. awful. Yes, some of David Mamet's stage plays, especially Glengarry Glen Ross, are dynamite. But he has written some of the worst scripts ever. Okay. Ba-ba-da-ba. Okie dokie. Mark says, I don't think you're out of touch. You've been an asset to all of us. Thank you. That doesn't mean I'm not out of touch. It means that I'm being an asset in the things I'm in touch with, which I am very confident on. I know I am useful and valid and in touch with creativity and with the art and craft of writing. I may be out of touch with some of the realities of the business. Okay. The scrap pile. Yes. Thank you, Maria. I really appreciate that. Indeed, I am love to be supportive. Thank you. Jairo says, I'm writing a short film about a person organizing a wedding, and the twist is that it's actually a funeral. Sounds cool. Yes. The blacklist is good, but it can be expensive. The problem with almost all of these online services is that they are businesses. They are there to take money from you. The thing about the blacklist that I can vouch for is that they are not only there to take money from you. Some of these contests and clubs are. I would say that the blacklist, it's entirely a question of whether or not you can afford to spend that money. You're not going to get it back. And are you getting from that the thing you want? Do not put all of your eggs into the basket of anything that is taking your money to put you into a community where you're getting competition and judgment. Okay. About feedback, take the good, leave the bad. Exactly. Thank you, Maria. Yes, Haskell is pointing out that while it is important to plan things, you also have to leave room for things to change or new things to appear. Okay, thank you. I'm seeing a lot of thank yous. I'm not going to click on all of them right now. The fish insists no more questions. Yes, okay. So the fish says no more questions. Thank you all so much. It's been fabulous. If I did not get to your question or your comment, I apologize. I think I got most of them. We will do this again every week. So until then, go write something.